Hello, good evening, everyone. It's with me again, Tasha, and today's IG Live is going to be the well-being, and it's going to be a mental health awareness, and we are going to invite Ibu Vicky Gardner as one of our speaker today, as well as Mbak Adisti Kampono. So I'm going to invite each one of them soon. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Okay, let me invite our two guests. Hello, good evening, Ibu. How are you?
Hi, good evening. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Let's wait until Mbak Adisti joins tonight, sorry. But before we begin, I want to give a little introduction about who you are, and please correct me if I'm wrong. From what I've learned from your LinkedIn profile, that you're currently the Dean of Student in Global Jaya, and you are also active in IB curriculum. You also make the curriculum for the mental health as well as the other SEL problems. I do aware that you come up with a lot of policies, and so far I have read probably about 4 policies, and I'm shocked because from what I've read, I didn't know that you have already upgraded it into the online learning as well as the blended learning. I'm very surprised, and I'm very overwhelmed to see all the hard work that I know that you've been doing. And I do notice too, I'm not the only one who have not aware about all these policies. So I hope you can share it with us tonight. Probably we can start with the SEL, and then we move on to the child protection, and then well, I'm really interested in talking about the 4-tier pastoral framework, because I'm totally clueless that's actually how things work. So you have separated from the emotional abuse and even from attendance. So if some kids are late or missing attendance, and you have done such a great deal into details, putting all this effort. So can you please explain it to us, like overall what you have planned for Global Jaya? Hi, Baisti, welcome.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank you,
Rufisi.
Tasha. Hi, Bufiki. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I've just been asked an incredible question, and I'm glad that you've just arrived because it gives you some time to think about how I'm going to respond.
Thank you for your time, Bufiki. I really hope that tonight will be inspiring and very informational, session for all the parents, and not only from Global Jaya, but we have also viewers from outside Global Jaya. So this is very important, and we know that you have a lot of important things to address. And this is a session for you. And shall we begin, Tasha?
The floor is yours, Ibu Vicky. You
Okay.
may start.
Well, I have to say thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to meet with you guys and meet with the parents in our community, as well as other people who might be interested in what we're doing. I think it's so important that we're all on the same page. And last year, or the past 18 months, we've led quite a few workshops with parents, held countless parent meetings, because we think that there are 3 people involved in a child's education, and it's the school, it's the parents, and it's the students themselves. And I think if any one of us is missing out of that triangle, then we just can't be successful. So the opportunity to be able to, first of all, experiment with Instagram. I'm ashamed that this is my first time, but the opportunity to be able to use this platform to be able to connect with people, have meaningful conversations about things that count, I think is really, really exciting. So I began at Global Jaya, when was that? July 2020, as the Dean of Students in secondary school. And something that is really important to me is that when we're looking at well-being and looking at social emotional learning, we don't just take a little piece of that and then offer that and then say, well, there you go, you're welcome. It's about so many different things all interacting and combining together, and everything has to make sense together. And that was really the idea behind the 4-tier pastoral framework, because as I was working initially from my kitchen table in France through the night at the beginning of last year, actually, as I was working on putting these policies in place, I was trying to make sure that each of them consciously connected with the other. So, for example, we have a peer-on-peer abuse policy that looks at interactions between students and what's a healthy interaction, what is an abusive interaction. And of course, that has got to fit and connect explicitly with our behavior policy, with our child protection policy. So every single thing has got to connect so that we're coherent and we're aligned. And when we're talking about mental health, social emotional learning, well-being, we can't just say, here's a small program and this is about well-being, and then that's it, thank you very much. Because if we have a school environment that isn't mentally healthy, if we have teachers that are not supportive of well-being, if we have a ton of assessment deadlines all jumbled up, and so our practices and our social norms are not supportive of well-being, then there's really no purpose in having this little program that talks about well-being. Everything has to fit and everything has to connect. And so I think that that's been the big driving force behind a lot of the work that I've done for the past year and a half. And yeah, that's what excites me, because I think that's when you make the biggest difference.
That's
Yeah, I do
that's
notice
great,
that.
Ibu Vicky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I looked through your work, and I didn't notice the single thing as even how the children appear at school. It could be a sign or red flag of a mental disability or a mental problem or issues that happens. And to me, it took more than just a simple teacher, but the drive, the instinct that needs to be shaped so that you can be aware. And I do notice that you wrote, because some people, they say that they may not want to report when they see something because they may be wrong. But then you said, don't think that you may be wrong, but think that you may be right. That is
Yeah,
something that, you know, it's
absolutely. I think
amazing.
that Bhutasha, first of all, you've really done your homework. Well done. You've done a lot of reading since I met you earlier
Yes.
in the week. I think that you're making explicit reference to the child protection policy,
Yes.
which obviously connects very explicitly to mental health, because when we're considering if a child's at risk, we're not just considering emotional, sexual, physical abuse and neglect. We're also thinking
Yes.
about, is a child at risk for themselves? Are they thinking about self-harm? Are they thinking about suicide? And so we have to be proactive with that, not just teaching students about mental health and how to take care of themselves, what red flags to look out for. Sure, we definitely have to teach that, and we do teach that. However, we need to be observant as a team. And I think one of the things that we were previously talking about is, well, who are the pastoral team? Actually, I think every single person in the school is the pastoral team. We all have to have eyes on. We all have a responsibility, because it takes a community to know this child and know when something's wrong and then to report. And that's the key thing. Knowing who your students are and what's normal for them, and understanding when something just isn't quite right. And sometimes that's an instinct that you can't necessarily put your finger on. So as a
Yes.
follow-up piece to that, when we're completing a child protection referral, the same as when we're pursuing a behavior incident or a bullying allegation, we always go in eyes open, open mind. It's so important not to jump to conclusions, and to make sure that you do a due process of fully understanding everything that's happened before you're then able to decide what the next steps are. So again, that's another connection between child protection and behavior and bullying. Everything is so intertwined in the work that we do.
All right. Well, thank you, Bufiki.
Yeah.
So we realized that I want to ask a very basic question. A lot of parents here may be not aware of what is mental health and what is well-being? Can you please make a short explanation on that so we know what is it all about that we're talking tonight?
There's actually, when you research well-being, there's lots of different definitions, and I think that that's an interesting conversation in itself. I think really we're looking at when we're able to function, when things are in balance, we're able to function. All of our systems are working in tandem. So our brain, our feelings, our spirituality, our body, everything is in tandem and balanced, and we're able to successfully function. And
Okay.
so when we look at the components of well-being, the things that contribute towards well-being, we're looking at things like socially connecting. We're looking at being physically active. We're looking at learning, being mindful. So there's quite a lot of research out there about what well-being is and how do we support well-being. And so I think that we don't necessarily align ourselves with one particular definition. It's more about, are you
Okay.
able to successfully function in a balanced way?
All right. So how do you connect, what is the connection between well-being and academic success for students?
I'm so glad that you asked me this question, because of course parents send their kids to school and they want them to be academically successful. However, I'm going to use my hand, and this is not my idea, but I saw it on a TED talk once, and I think, oh, that makes so much sense. So if you imagine that your wrist here is the brainstem, and that's sending signals up into the brain. If we put the thumb across, this is the limbic system, this is the feeling part of the brain, this is where the memory is. And then we have the thinking part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. So I'll just fold my fingers over there. If the limbic system is calm and emotions are well regulated, then the thinking part of the brain is able to do its job. It's able to make good decisions. It's able to think critically. However, if the limbic system, the emotional part of the brain, is feeling anxious or afraid or agitated, then that's bouncing around all over the place. The thinking part of its brain can't do its job.
All right.
And so we see that if a student is not well, if their well-being is not good, then they can't be academically successful, or they can't be as academically successful as they would otherwise be. So that's why we see that it's so important to support well-being in schools.
Yeah, I do
Great.
notice that a
Okay.
lot of people tend to separate mental and physical health. And then when you explain about the limbic and how the brain works, it actually all connected. So when we talk about mental health, it's not simply just how you feel, but it really connects to how your brain perceive all the academic information and all that. And I do notice, Ibu, when you explain to me about how the limbic system, if I'm not mistaken, that is the I think the oldest part, or the oldest reflex of the brain system. Is it on the brainstem? And um, and it actually started when we were a baby, right? So when we talk about mental health, so it's a lifelong journey. So even though when you're a baby, the limbic systems already work. So could it actually store trauma in the limbic system, even though when you're a baby?
That's a really in-depth question that I probably would defer to a psychologist to answer, and would not be my area of expertise. My guess is, like, totally and definitely the memory is very much connected to our emotions and our limbic system. So there would definitely be explicit connections there, but I'm not a psychologist, so I won't try to answer that in more detail.
Okay. I have a very simple question. Since you already have all these policies set up for us, the parents, and for all the teachers, does the children aware of these? Do they know about all of these?
Yeah, that is an amazing question, because we have done a lot of teacher workshops and many parent workshops. And the next step is the student workshops. I think to some extent the students are aware, but not aware as they need to be. So, for example, with the behavior policy, which is built upon the foundation of rights and responsibilities, we have those rights and responsibilities up now in the classrooms in secondary. And so, excuse me, these now need to form our daily conversations. So when students are in the classroom and maybe they're not ready to learn, our behavior policy says that I have the responsibility to arrive on time and be ready to learn. So we're able to bring that into our conversation. Something that we're going to be working on this year is talking about child protection with students in terms of assemblies, but we've also integrated child protection related themes into our extended advisory curriculum. What we don't want to do is deliver something to the students and then that's it. It needs to be part of our daily conversations and our daily interactions with the students. So the short answer to your question is to some extent. However, we're not there yet, and there's a lot more work to be done. We created an inclusion policy last year, for example, and I know that Ibureni went to a year level meeting and was talking about the importance of inclusion and diversity. However, that is not widespread, and that's not enough in itself in order to build a community that is inclusive and that celebrates and values diversity. So I think that there's a superficial level, and we've definitely started, but we're committed to, now we've got everything in place, we're committed to making sure that these become deeply embedded rather than just superficial policies that remain in a Google Drive.
Okay. Would there be any more training for us parents? Because I know it's been a year or more, about almost 2 years that we haven't get any information update in terms of the child protection program, the peer-to-peer abuse, and all the other policies.
Yeah, actually, we ran several workshops last year for parents connected to child protection, inclusion, the behavior policy, the extended advisory curriculum, the peer-on-peer abuse. So we did run many parent workshops, which we also shared afterwards on Manage Back. But I think that the conversation doesn't end there. It needs to be a continued conversation. And the fact that I'm here tonight at 7 o'clock in the evening, I hope demonstrates our commitment as a school to continuing this work. We understand that we're not finished. In fact, we'll never be finished, and we're committed to continuing to do the best that we possibly can.
Excellent.
Yes.
So, Ibu Vicky, how does Global Jaya School upskilling their staff so that they are better equipped to support well-being?
Well, speaking about workshops, I was writing down earlier, I was thinking, wow, I feel like we've done so much. How much have we done? Here's the statistics. So this is since August 2020. We've led 4 child protection workshops with our staff, 7 inclusion workshops, 1 workshop about relationships, 1 workshop about mental health, 1 workshop on approaches to learning skills and how to explicitly teach things like social emotional skills, 1 workshop on peer abuse, a workshop on the behavior policy, 2 workshops on the advisory curriculum. So again, it's the whole idea of these ongoing conversations and showing staff how everything is linked, and that when we're going to roll out a behavior policy, then we're going to do that in connection with approaches to learning skills. So again, it's an ongoing conversation, and staff need to understand the reasons behind what we're doing and why it's important. So often in our workshops, we will model what we want staff to be doing with the students. So for example, at the beginning of this year, we led a workshop with staff where we modeled how to teach social emotional skills. And then we had staff go away and prepare for how they were going to teach social emotional skills. So when we're working with staff, and by the way, staff well-being directly connects to student well-being. And so we also take care of staff well-being, and perhaps we can have some time to talk about that too, because it's really connected. When we're working with staff, it's on a constructivist model, which basically means we learn together. And it's not just a giving presentation and thank you very much. It's learning together about how to be educators that support well-being and support social emotional learning.
Excellent. This is an amazing program, Ibu. And Yeah. So
I do
we know
notice.
that during
Sorry, you
sorry,
can
you
go
want to
ahead,
go?
Macy.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
can go. We both want to say something because it's also
It's
exciting.
about it's a little bit lagging here, Ibu. So we kind of like, you know. All right. So one last question from me. Uh, During this pandemic, where everyone is working from home and all the kids are studying from home, um, everyone is undergoing for something that is what you call new normal. And this the kids are experiencing like they really have to change their habits and their lifestyle and their learning ways from being face to face, where their age are they're supposed to be socializing with friends and they cannot do it. So their life is like, you know, 180 degrees, different. So how does the school cope with this in the almost 2 years? What sort of programs that you build with the team to support the well-being and the mental health? And uh, what is the result of it? Because we are starting hybrid learning or blended learning right now. How do you review that in the past almost 2 years?
Okay, so much to talk about. You're so right. The impact on our students for their entire life completely changing, and education completely changing. Like the impact on our students was huge. All of a sudden, we didn't have these people in front of us. We weren't able to use our knowledge of who they were and what they looked like, and like how do they use their body and their face when they're okay and they're learning. We didn't have any of that. All of our teacher tools uh, disappeared, and so all of a sudden we had to completely rethink everything. And well-being rightly came to the forefront, and we as a school we're like we've got to focus on this. And so we did several things over a period of time. Some were more successful. For example, we created a weekly well-being vlog. Various members of the school created a vlog every Monday, and that was talking about the strategies that they use to support their own well-being. And the intention behind that was to make sure that well-being was visible, that it was sharing practical strategies, and that because it was delivered by many different members of staff, the intention was to send the message that taking care of your well-being is not something you just need to do as a student, and it's not just the domain of the counselor. It's everybody's concern for the rest of your life. So I think that the well-being vlog was effective in terms of raising the profile of well-being and communicating to the community different concrete strategies that we're able to do. Um, Something that we put in place very quickly was a student well-being thermometer. And the intention behind that, it sent out, speaking from a secondary perspective at the moment, it's sent out every week, and it asks students to talk about how much sleep they're getting. It asks them to identify what feelings they're experiencing, how often they're experiencing those feelings. It asks them if they would like help, and if so, what kind of help would they like. So we've sent this out every week since the beginning, since I arrived in July 2020. And so over time, it's been incredibly helpful to enable us to track well-being. It's also been helpful in identifying individual students who need help. It's been really interesting to see how the students have used it. Some students use it almost like a personal journal. And I read every single response every single week. And so I'll often use what they write, and I'll email them and say, hey, I'm sorry to hear your granddad just passed away, or wow, I'm so proud of you for achieving such and such. So it became a way of opening up dialogue between not just myself, but the pastoral team and the students. So the wellbeing thermometer, we've continued actually. And even once we're back in school fully, we will still continue, because I think it's not as simple as having a set of support services for students. And to say to students, well, do you know what, if you need help, there's a counselor over there, or You can go and speak to your head of year, because students don't always have the capacity, first of all, to understand that they need help. Secondly, to understand the kind of help they need, and therefore the sort of person that they need to access. And thirdly, the skills to be able to say, or to start a conversation that says, hey, I'm really struggling. Please, can you help me? And so providing this as a vehicle for the students, I think was really powerful. And as I said, will continue. We've also put something called social connections in place. And I think that this is particularly important. We were talking earlier about the different ways in which you can support well-being. And one of those are connecting, like feeling connected to people. And I think a large part of why well-being was suffering for our students during the pandemic was because they didn't have access to their social connections. And so it's a little contrived, but once a month in secondary, we facilitate social connections with an actual activity. So for example, tomorrow during the school day, in the morning, we have worked with Student Council and we have a Halloween themed online escape room event. And the purpose is purely to connect students with one another in a way that isn't connected to learning. And again, it goes back to this idea that if we're going to support well-being, we're eventually supporting academic success. So that's why we invest in this. And if you can imagine being a student in blended learning, or being a student that can't come back to school at all, you're stuck at home still. You can see your friends on the computer. I can't imagine anything more isolating, actually, as a student. So I think more than ever, we need to be actively searching for ways in order to socially connect these students. I said it was a little contrived, and I guess it is. However, the alternative is that nothing happens, and that's not good enough. We also made sure that for World Mental Health Day, for example, we put positive affirmation posters around the school. So when people went to the bathroom, for example, they would look in the mirror, and there's a poster that Ingrid made as a secondary counselor, and it was like, I am worthy, I deserve to heal. So just like little messages that send positivity to yourself. And we also held a live mindfulness session with students and teachers on the tennis courts. We weren't sure how this was going to go, but it was really good. We had loads of people turn up, loads of people. And we did, I think, mindful walking, we were mindful listening, mindful breathing. And these are really simple tools that can make a huge difference to a student's well-being, because it's a specific practical tool that they can use for themselves. A large part of what we did last year was write the advisory curriculum, the extended advisory curriculum. And that was with the intention of launching that this year. And it's along a similar line as to equipping students with the skills that they need in order to be able to take care of themselves. And so although we worked on that last year, it wasn't launched. We've kept that for this year. So last year, we really focused on having Friday activities again, social connections, facilitating fun and communication. So we're keeping that this year, but we've added that education element of being proactive and really equipping the students with specific skills. And I've got some examples of some of the units that we've written in secondary, if that's helpful. Essentially, if you get me started talking about this could be several hours.
But it's so exciting because I noticed that since my children are still in the primary level, and last year they started to have affirmation morning. So when they come into class, they have to come up and say, I'm happy, or I'm worthy, or I'm strong, whatever that is. But each student has to say a good affirmation, which is different from others. And even that, some kids are having a hard time. So I do really appreciate it when you start doing this. And my other son, he's now in year 2, and even the counselor make this SEL session every Wednesday in the morning, where the kids just talk and hang out with their friends without having to think about their school homework or tasks that they need to do. So I really do think that if you can't adapt that the thermometer to the primary level, I think it would be a great idea too, and especially
If they
teaching
have
the
something
kids
in
about the red
place,
flag.
I believe that they
Uh,
do have something in place that is very similar to our well-being
mhm.
thermometer in secondary.
Yeah, and
Mm.
then the red flags, because I know the children right now, they're so far they have not acknowledging their feeling is actually normal. So sometimes they still feel frustrated, and they tend to hide it from their teacher. So they just do it and vent it out to their parents. And for us parents, we need to know the red flags. Maybe you can share with us some of the red flags.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, Boo, actually, and I began to put a bit of a list together, and then I stopped because I think it's like you know your child better than anybody, and you know what is normal for your child, because part of the list that I was writing was the child
Mm-hmm.
withdraws, or like the child like spends more time in their bedroom. But actually, do you know what I think the biggest red flag of them all is if your instinct tells you something's not right, and if your child's behavior changes. So it might be really normal for your child not to talk about their feelings, and that's normal for them, that's normal for your relationship. And so that red flag is going to be somewhere else in their behaviors that you need to be attuned in and looking for. Going back to the child protection policy, it says don't think what if it didn't happen, think what if it is. And I think that that's the best approach that I can advise parents. Make time to talk to your child and find out about their day. It's not always easy for
Yes,
teenagers or for
yes,
children generally to talk to their parents about their
absolutely.
feelings. So there's loads of tools online to
Mm.
help you to have those conversations, whether it's an image or a photograph, or you watch a video together, something that you do together in order to try to create a platform where you're able to have your child
Mm.
open up to you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I do agree.
Bufiki, I want to share something about what happened to me, to my family personally. This is very important to share because sometimes that red flag, because we are not psychologists, so we sometimes we miss that. But I always have an open communication with my children. So I always check on them and see and watch if they have behavioral change. And when they do have something different, they did something different that is like a change in them, like staying in the room all day, or they sleep, or they want to be in front of the screen the whole day, that questions me. And uh, they become like emotionally distanced with the family. And I check on one of my kids, and then I keep just probing and probing and probing, and I often have discussion with the school, with Ibu Fiki. So that makes me quickly identify what's really happening. It's actually the effect of online studying. It's really impacting one of my kids, and uh, he experienced anxiety. So he withdraw from, not really, I mean, like he doesn't want to do his work, like he missed submission or he's forgetting things. And I just realized, and he sleeps a lot, and he has stomach pain. So that now I understand why Global Jaya, when they have this certain decision to deal with the kids, not being too pushy, but pushing at the right button and not making the children more stressful. That's why I think GJS, presented by Ibu Fiki, your program is very successful. With the well-being thermometer, it really helps my kids personally to really check on themselves and have somebody that trusts and validate their feelings. For
Yes.
me, being validated is the most important, not neglecting it, because maybe the parents do not validate their feelings, but the school validate their feelings. That's why they still want to go to school. They still want to go online, even though it's like, it's very fatigued for them. It's very tiring for them. But and I really appreciate what you have done for the kids. And I'm really thankful that just right after we identify my son actually with anxiety during the those periods, and after he enters the school, Ibu Fiki, and it's like all gone, and he's like so spirited right now, so happy going back to school. He's gained so much focus, he's more confidence, and I think it's because on this age where he's 15 years old, it's like kind of the period where the kids are still trying to find themselves and they have to change the way they live. Now they have grown so much from this pandemic entering the blended learning. And this is what's so great about, having really focus on the mental health and well-being of the kids. So yeah, thanks for that, Gufiki.
And thank you for sharing. I'd like to say three things. I think it's difficult as a parent. I hope I can remember all three things. I'll speak quickly. I think it's difficult as a parent to understand. Of course, you love your child and you focus on your child and you want your child to be successful, and you only have that picture. You don't have the picture of what's happening with everybody else's kids too. And so there's a fear of, well, what's wrong with my child? And like everyone else looks like they're going fine. And so I would urge parents, in my contact articles, I try to communicate that, like, this is what's been happening, and it's expected and it's very normal. And so when we have meetings with parents and with students, it's never with, well, why haven't you been submitting your work? It's really more of an approach of, okay, what's going wrong? Let's figure out what can we do. And working with parents is a key part of that, particularly during the pandemic. Two things, I've still remembered them. Second thing, there are some red flags in terms of watching out for signs of depression in particular. And you mentioned the idea of sleeping. And I would also add eating too. We often, with signs of depression, sleeping patterns and eating patterns change quite dramatically. Not always, but that can definitely be a warning sign to look out for. And the third thing that I wanted to say was the importance of data. And I'm going to sound quite geeky at this point, but the Wellbeing Thermometer provides us with data, with information, but there's a whole set of other information that is able to communicate to us that something is wrong. So, for example, we track attendance in secondary school, and when a child misses up to 5 classes, then we communicate with the parent, and then 10, and then 15. And all of that is designed to facilitate communication with the parents, because if a student is missing a class, something's going wrong. And it could be very simple in that there's an internet problem, but also it could be the teacher-student relationship. It's because the student is finding it difficult to understand the learning, and so they're skipping, or because their sleep structures are all over the place. So attendance data is super important to us because it can be a sign, and that's why we communicate with the parents. And one more piece of data, we have assessment data. And we don't look at that for, oh dear, things are not going so well. We look at that in order to indicate to us who's struggling, who needs help, who's doing really, really well, and we can push a little further. So assessment data gives us a lot of information, not just about a child's academic success, but a whole load of other things that are happening. So you asked at the beginning, Boo, about the 4-tier pastoral framework, and you mentioned how it connects attendance and the child protection policy and blah, 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 blah. And it's for exactly that reason. It's because data it tells us so much about what's happening with a child, and that often during the pandemic has been the starting point for us, which is why we reach out to the parents and to the student and say, hey, what's happening, what's going on.
I see. I
Right.
it may not be familiar in other school, where other school think attendance is more about like you not being discipline. But in terms of Global Jaya, I can understand. So in terms of absence, it's not about this kid is not being disciplined, but the reason behind why he's not attending. And I understand that the teacher really go an extra mile to see what's going on with this kid. So not just, blaming the kid. Why aren't you in the class? You should be doing this and that. But you're actually looking for why are these kids are not doing this. And it's really awesome. I really do hope other schools around Indonesia can adopt this
Yes.
system that you're doing, because I know a lot of other kids out there might be struggling, but they don't have the capability to communicate how they're feeling, or they just don't want to open up and say. Because I noticed, I read on the news only, I think 2 months ago, or a couple months ago, there's this primary school student that actually killed himself because he wasn't being happy, and nobody noticed anything, because as we all know, depression may not see its face. Sometimes the kid would be smiling and looking okay, but reality they're not. But I know that the school go the extra mile to look at those small into details. And I do hope there with inclusion as well, because you're mentioning about inclusion, being a child with a special need in mainstream school is not easy. And then with teacher noticing their inclusion doesn't mean different, or less, it's just a little bit different, also brings up their confidence. I do notice a lot of the teacher give a lot of encouragement for the students that are having problem, instead of other schools. They pointed out, you're not smart, or you need help. But in Global Jaya, you have a different approach. So how do you train the teachers to be able to see that?
Yeah, well, this is again another one of those continued conversations. I think so far we have led 7 inclusion workshops. And before I answer your question, I'd just like to touch on the fact that our approach as an IB school, our approach to inclusion is via something called Universal Design for Learning primarily.
Yes.
And the fundamental understanding behind this is really closely connected to brain science. And advancements in brain science have told us that there's no such thing as an average student. There just isn't. There's no average. There is learner variability. Every single one of us approaches learning in a variable way. And so what our job is to do is to understand what are the barriers that are stopping this student from being successful. Now, sometimes those barriers are more short term. For example, if they've had an argument at home, I don't know if you guys remember being back in school, but I know when I had a big fight with my parents, I wasn't going to school and learning. So
yes,
emotional upset and turmoil, family conflict, that becomes a barrier to learning that isn't permanent. For example, if I took my glasses off right now, I wouldn't have a clue where my phone is, and that would be a barrier to my success. So Universal Design for Learning is the understanding that we don't label anybody. We don't use the term special educational needs anymore, because what that does is it segregates, and it says that like all of these children are average, they're normal, and this child, they're different, they're special. Like, how does that contribute to an environment where well-being is supported? It doesn't. And so
totally
when
agree.
you shift the mindset of the teaching community to understand that this is about, okay, this child is not successful in my class. Why? What's happening? What can I do to change in order to include this child? Where can I be flexible? Where can I offer choice? All of a sudden, we have a shift in mindset, and we're not then labeling the child, sitting them in the corner like the old-fashioned way. Brain science has moved on, and education is moving on, and I'm so proud that I'm in a school that supports Universal Design for Learning, because inclusion is obviously closely connected to well-being. How can you feel well if you feel like you're not smart, if you feel like you have special educational needs and you're different? And so I think that we've gone some way. I think it's a journey. All of this is a journey. And I think I said at the beginning, we're not at a point where we're going to say, okay, we're done. We're always going to be striving to be better. The last workshop that we led with staff recently, last week or something like that, was about how to use Universal Design for Learning strategies for all students. in the majority of classes, all students should be able to have flexibility and choice in their learning. And so that's what we were working on, different UDL strategies, like what do they look like in maths, planning ahead. We created a tool for teachers to use in order to support them, because they're learning too, to support them in being able to apply UDL in the class. And this is whole school, by the way. This is relevant and appropriate all the way from our youngest all the way through to our oldest. It's the same approach. So like, we're definitely in a different place than we were a year and a half ago, and we'll continue to move that way because it's important.
Yes, thank you, Ibu. Because I know neurodiversity has become an important topic nowadays, and it's very pleasing to know that school is willing to adapt this information and translate it to a different curriculum. Because I know it's not easy to change your curriculum, but the school is right now is currently willing to even change the curriculum to make it available for everyone. And
can I just
to have
add
the
on to
training.
because it's not
Yes,
about
please.
changing the curriculum. It's looking for flexibility and options and
learning.
choice. So for example,
Yes.
if a student is able to choose skateboarding to investigate rather than have to investigate I don't know, something very dull, then they're going to be more engaged if they're investigating something that they're really
They like.
interested in. My
Yes.
eldest child has dyspraxia, and she can express herself very, very well verbally, but if she has to handwrite, when she was a diploma student, her handwriting, what she communicated via handwriting, was at a primary school level. And so we had to remove the barrier of needing to handwrite and enable her to be able to use a laptop in IB exams in order for us to really capture what she can do. So we didn't change the curriculum for that. We looked for what are the barriers, what flexibility and choice can we offer, all the way through to diploma, not just for PYP and MYP.
Yes, I
Excellent,
know
Ibu.
that.
I remember, yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Tracy.
remember. I remember that I was talking about how the IB school really expects the student to be very expressive, and sometimes there are kids who are introverted and they don't want to, they don't feel comfortable expressing themselves when they are in a crowd or in a classroom full of people. So that was my question, whether Global Jaya School or the with the universal design of learning being applied at GJS, I guess it's going to be very good for those type of students, and they will somehow be accepted, you know. And this universal design of learning, this is what I call the forward thinking of education. I think is very is a new way of approach to learning. And I want to know how many schools around the world that have applied this way of approach.
Yes.
Cool, that's a big question. As IB schools, it is clearly documented that this is one of the ways that they would like IB schools to be able to extend learning for all. In terms of I work for the IB outside of my role in Global Jaya. I inclusion workshops. So I'm going into another school in Indonesia later in November to lead a workshop for them about universal design for learning. So because of my experiences with the IB, I can tell you that schools are beginning to say, hey, what's this thing? I would like to find out a bit more. But in terms of being far along their UDL journey, I've come across very few schools that are. Very few. And so I'm pretty proud of where we're at. There's definitely room for growth, but yeah, I think we're not doing too bad at all. And going back, Buadisi, your comment about if a child is introverted and they're not able to express in group work, for example, that's not how they can best be successful. Why should they be limited unless they are being assessed explicitly on communication skills? Because of the MYP assessment criteria, for example, that's a different story because that's rigid and fixed by the IB. But if this is a way of showing understanding, you can show understanding in an individual video. You can show understanding in a presentation or an essay or a cartoon strip or a poster. So what we've been trying to work with the teachers to do is to identify where there is flexibility and where there isn't flexibility. And the example that I just gave of the assessment criteria being fixed and very specific in some cases, it's true, they are. In one of the language guides, it talks about assessing oral skills, for example. We can't get away from that. A student would need to demonstrate oral skills to be assessed with that particular criteria. However, in the arts guide, it talks about demonstrating creativity, but it doesn't say how. So we right then have flexibility to be able to say, right, okay, well, let's look at who you are. Let's help you make a choice. How do you best show your creativity? Let's explore that together. So it's really about unlocking every individual student's potential and taking away unnecessary things that are irrelevant in terms of the assessment criteria, and really enabling every individual to shine.
It's,
Amazing.
I do notice I had a meeting with Ibu Reddy, I think last month, since my son just diagnosed with dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. And at first, I thought the school would not let him using the ICT or the technology, assisted technology. But apparently, Ibu Reddy says, well, it has nothing to do with how he answers. It just helps or lessen the stress that he needs to go through. So I do understand what, like how the system is working right now. It's more adaptable and it's more open with all the resources.
Yeah, and the IB speaks about technology being a tool to unlock potential. And how true is that? Like for example, showing students how to use technology for themselves on Google Drive. Did you know that you can click on tools and you can click a button and you can talk at your laptop and it will type it for you?
Yes.
Like there are such simple and accessible tools. For example, in Gmeet, if a student is finding it difficult to understand and listen because they're learning English, click on the closed caption function and that will tell you exactly what is being said in text. So when we provide information in different ways and we use technology to support learning, boom, all of a sudden, all of these barriers are removed and we begin to see what each child is capable of.
Yes, this is a whole new world for us in Indonesia, because at first, the children with learning disorders are always segregated. Basically, they're the underdog. They're always labeled stupid instead of like just being different. And I really do hope that the other parents that watching this in here could also download all the policies that you have made, Ibu, because I know it's such a wonderful job that you have done, and they will understand the importance of being sensitive on what their kids are showing every day, even question. Sometimes they come up with the question to them, Mama, do you know that I just learned about this and that? And then like my kids right now, they're still both at home doing online learning, but none of them are showing a big stress because the teacher always makes them happy to be in class. So even in the morning, they always just run to the shower without having me waking them up. While me, on the other hand, growing up, it's really hard to wake me up just to go into the shower and then go to class.
Yes.
Right? And then our children are just
you're right, Tasha.
very excited to go to class every day. They don't want to miss even a single class. And even they always come up to me, Mama, so the break is only for one day, right? So tomorrow I'm going back to school? Yes. Okay, that's good. So they don't hesitate if the holiday only for one day and then the next day they have to come back to school. They really love going to school.
Right.
Yeah, and I really
do
hope.
Tasha, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I do feel the other children experience that too, yeah, Ibu, yeah?
Yes, that's true. That's my kids. My kids also, since they've entered Global Jaya when they were year 3 and year 5, and then they never want to skip school because previously they went to a Cambridge curriculum, and they were not really suitable with Cambridge curriculum because my kids are more creative and imaginative. And when they entered IB, they just don't want to skip school. They just like when I say, well, you want to go on holiday? I said, no, we have school tomorrow. Or they
Yes.
really focus on doing work. And they just love going to school. They wake up in the morning and they off to school. It's very different when we were younger, like Tasha said. And I think this is what you told us about how the in Global Jaya, the curriculum is really focused on the mental health and well-being of the children. And kudos to that, you guys are successful, I think.
Yeah.
And I really hope that other parents, maybe most of them are experiencing the same thing. And I think that's the key of the success is actually make the children enjoying school, enjoying education, because they still have a
Yes.
long way to go. They still go until college time, maybe masters or PhD, and they still have to love going to school. Instead of traumatizing them, Global Jaya makes the kids love going to school.
It's
Well,
Yeah.
true.
that's fantastic. And I'm just slightly distracted by a couple of the comments coming
Yes.
in. There's a comment here from, I think, Bulina. I'm new to
Yeah.
Instagram. I'm just learning how this works. Just talking
You're doing
about
great.
the importance of effective skills. So it talks here, Bulina talks about being excited to learn. And we know there is such a massive connection. We call them effective skills. So basically, your emotions, your ability to regulate your emotions. And if you're feeling excited, and then you're motivated, it's obviously directly connected because you're then engaged and then you're going to succeed. So if we consider learning without the emotions, we take out all of the emotional regulation. Oh man, that's a world I don't want to live in, I have to say.
True.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. I
It's
wish that
very
in
scary.
college, hopefully they will experience the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's
And
it's we see the Pakori is also watching the live right now.
yes, Pakori says
Hello, Pakori.
something. Wait. Pakori says fantastic session
He
on the
said,
topic of great and ongoing importance. Thank you. It is very important. And I do think
yes,
that this has opened a new perspective about Global Jaya to other parents out there that may be looking for school right now. They're probably scouting for school, and
yes,
we
yes,
have
yes,
added value to Global Jaya where other school may not have.
I am
yes,
attempting to
absolutely.
write my email address in the chat here. I would encourage not just people who are thinking about an alternative school, but any existing parents or students or teachers who have joined us here today. If any of these topics hit a nerve with you, or you're interested to find out more, or you'd like to find out how you can contribute, then please email me. I love to chat about this kind of thing. Uh, and I would really
Amazing.
love to
Yeah.
hear from you. So I'm going to stop talking so I can concentrate on typing my email address in
Okay.
the chat.
So yeah. So I want to explain again that mungkin tadi orang tua atau parents yang tadi belum sempat nonton dari awal ya, karena ada yang join di tengah-tengah. Kita sedang membahas mental health awareness dan well-being dan betapa pentingnya anak-anak itu kita harus jaga dari sisi mental health dan well-being mereka untuk kesuksesan sekolah mereka. Dan mereka harus bahagia, mereka harus bisa enjoy sekolah. Dan kebetulan di Global Jaya ini mereka menerapkan namanya Universal Design of Learning. Ini di mana adalah menginclude semua, menyamaratakan semua anak itu, tidak ada yang pintar, tidak ada yang bodoh, tidak ada yang special needs, semua itu sama dan memiliki hak yang sama atas treatment dan pendidikan. Dan ini adalah poin penting di mana tidak banyak sekolah di dunia yang menerapkan konsep Universal Design of Learning ini, dan di Global Jaya sudah. Jadi ini keren banget dan apa namanya sangat forward thinking. Dan di sini ada Ibu Vicky yang ahlinya. Ya, Tasya ya. Gitu.
Iya, ini udah dipin email Ibu Vicky. Ibu Vicky juga dengan senang hati katanya menerima email. Kalau ada yang mau nanya atau yang mau nambahin sedikit informasi, mungkin I'm gonna say both in English and Bahasa Indonesia. All the policies that Ibu Vicky has set up is actually ready. You can just click on the link tree on the PTA bio, and it says over there the school policies, and you can download all of the policy that Ibu Vicky has created, and you can read it thoroughly. And if you have any questions or if you have anything to add, please feel free to email to Ibu Vicky. I already pinned Ibu Vicky's email address now in Bahasa. So untuk yang ingin tahu peraturan-peraturan sekolah yang sudah disusun oleh Ibu Vicky mengenai keselamatan anak, safety protection, juga peer-to-peer abuse, semuanya bisa diklik dari PTA Bio, ada link tree-nya, silakan dipilih school policy, di situ bisa di-download semua polisinya. Jadi silakan yang mau bertanya atau mau menambahkan dari yang sudah disusun oleh Ibu Vicky dalam policy itu ke email Ibu Vicky yang sudah saya pin di bawah ini. I guess
Ya,
this is a
betul
very
Tasya,
powerful
keren.
this is a very
Yes,
powerful message to all
topik,
that,
the message
yeah,
ya.
and for other people to understand that not only the leadership team understand the importance of the mental health, but also the teachers, and as well as the parents, and also the students. So the whole society of Global Jaya understand the importance of mental health in supporting the academic prestige of the student as well. And I do hope we can have another session with Ibu Vicky, because we
Yes,
haven't
of
talked
course.
much about
Harus
bullying, and we haven't touched enough about inclusion.
inclusivity.
Inclusion is something new for us in Indonesia.
Yes.
We're just adapting to accepting others that not quite normal or neurotypical, and not using the term normal is something Indonesian doesn't understand. So it's really good that Global Jaya has this, and I do hope that children understands and accept others with special need as part of their own. So when these kids are like big and they're thrown up to the society, they won't look at the people that they may look different in, in a weird view, but it may be comfortable, and treating those people just exactly the same as they will treat themselves. So this is a really important point, when the children already see these differences, acknowledge the differences, and how do I say this? Probably respecting others in terms of their mental health condition and their physical condition, all that wrapped into one. And I do hope the world will be a better place by, making all these kids like this, because they're the one that going to continues and bring up the future for us. I do hope that Global Jaya would continue to exceed our expectation in terms of all these policies, and I'm very proud of having you, Ibu Vicky, as part of the Global Jaya. And yeah, and I really do hope, Ibu, we can have another session. So this will be our first session, and there's going to be another
Harus,
session with you.
Absolutely.
ya, kita
I'd
harus
love
ada
to come
sesi
back.
lagi.
Thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me. It's really been a pleasure, and I'm really privileged to belong to the Global Jaya community. I'm happy to be here.
The pleasure
Thank you
is
so
all
much, Bu
ours.
Vicky.
Thank you so much.
Your contribution is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah,
So we'll see you in the next programs. Yeah. We have
yes,
more
so
topics to come about mental health and well-being of the
exactly,
students, and this topic is open for all audiences, not only for Global J parents, but also
for publics.
To learn more about the mental health and well-being and how we deal and recognize the red flags. And this is very important because sometimes for a lot of Indonesian, mental health is quite a taboo issue to discuss.
Yes.
But not for now. We have to open up, for all audiences, and we have to recognize that right away to save our kids. Thank you so much, Vicky.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
and hope to
Jen.
see you soon. We'll
Thank
arrange
you.
another IG live session with you. Bye. Good night, everyone. Thank you for watching.
Bye.